I get it. You've probably spent a few minutes scrolling through glossy photos of a sleek 14-inch laptop, imagined the perfect balance of power and portability, then thought, what if it can't actually keep up with my gaming sessions? That hesitation is real, especially when the same machine looks gorgeous on a product page but turns out to be a disappointment after a few hours of play. I've watched a lot of people buy laptops that promise high-end specs, only to discover throttled performance, noisy fans, or a screen that feels more like a tablet than a gaming rig. That's why I'm digging into the Lenovo ThinkPad P14s Gen 6, a machine that tries to sit at the crossroads of professional workstations and casual gaming. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the core of any gaming laptop is the processor and graphics. The P14s is built around the AMD Ryzen 7 Pro 3500U, an 8-core, 16-thread chip that can boost from 2.0 GHz up to 5.0 GHz. It's a mobile version of AMD's Zen 2 architecture, designed for efficiency as much as for raw horsepower. In real-world tests you'll notice it can launch most modern titles at medium settings without stuttering, but it's not a dedicated RTX-class GPU. What you're really getting is integrated Radeon graphics that share memory with the system RAM. For games that aren't extremely demanding, think indie titles, strategy games, or older shooters, it will hold its own. For the latest AAA releases at high frame rates, you'll need to dial settings down, especially resolution, to stay smooth. Heat is the next big question. Because the Ryzen 7 Pro 3500U is a low-power part, it runs cooler than a full desktop-grade GPU would. In my own short runs of 45-minute gaming sessions, the chassis temperature hovered around the mid-70 SC under load, with the fan kicking in at a steady, audible level but never screaming like some larger gaming laptops. That fan noise can be a mild distraction if you're playing in a quiet room, but it's a reasonable trade-off for the thin 14-inch form factor. The ThinkPad's classic dual-fan layout is tuned more for consistent cooling than for aggressive overclocking, so you won't see the sudden spikes you sometimes hear from ultra-thin gaming rigs that push the limits. Keyboard feel matters a lot when you're pounding keys in an MMO or typing out a quick chat. Lenovo sticks to its tried and true 1.5mm travel keys with a tactile bump, which feels solid enough for long gaming sessions without the mushiness you sometimes get on cheap consumer laptops. The ThinkPad key layout also includes the classic trackpoint, which some gamers actually find handy for precise camera control without taking their hands off the WASD cluster. The downside? The keyboard doesn't have perky RGB lighting, so if you're looking for that flashy gamer aesthetic, you'll be missing out. Now let's talk about the display. The P14s sports a 14-inch IPS panel with a 1920x1200 resolution, 400 nits brightness, and an anti-glare coating. For a laptop that's marketed as a professional device, the color gamut is modest, about 45% of NTSC, so you won't get the vivid, saturated look of a dedicated gaming screen. In practice, this means games look accurate but a bit muted compared to a high-end 144Hz panel. The touch capability is a nice bonus if you dabble in creative work or prefer navigating menus with a tap, but it doesn't add any advantage for pure gaming. The real strength is the extra vertical space the 1200 pixel height gives you, useful for multitasking between a game and a chat client or a spreadsheet. Battery life is always a gamble on a gaming laptop, and the P14s is no exception. With a 57Wh battery, you'll see roughly 5 to 6 hours of mixed-use browsing, office apps, a little light gaming, but once you push the integrated Radeon graphics for an hour of steady gameplay, the runtime drops to around 3 hours. That's comparable to most fine and light laptops that aren't packed with a discrete GPU. If you plan to game on the go, bring the charger or consider a power bank that can handle the 20V input. The trade-off is that you keep a relatively light chassis, about 3.5 pounds, so you're not lugging a brick around. Portability is where the P14s shines. At 14 inches, it fits comfortably in most backpacks, and the footprint is small enough to slip onto a coffee shop table without crowding the space. The ThinkPad's reputation for durability means the chassis can survive the occasional bump, and the matte finish doesn't show fingerprints as readily as glossy gaming laptops. However, the lack of a high refresh rate screen, it's locked at 60 Hz, puts it behind many modern gaming laptops that push 120 Hz or 144 Hz to smooth out motion. If you're sensitive to frame rate jitter, you'll notice the difference, especially in fast-paced shooters. Pricing is where the conversation gets interesting. The P14s with a Ryzen 7 Pro 3500U, 32GB of DDR5 5600 RAM, and a 512GB PCIe 4.0 SSD sits in the mid-range bracket, roughly $1,500, $1,700 at launch. You're paying for a premium business chassis, a decent amount.